Hello, Sig Docs people. This is Tuesday, June 12th, 2018, and this is the weekly meeting of Kubernetes Sig Docs. Sig Docs channel, all Sig Docs all the time. Do we have any new contributors? I see Takuya Tokuda. Is this your first time with us? I think so. Yep. Hello, welcome. Takuya has contacted me with interest for starting a Japanese internationalization of Kubernetes documentation. So we are moving up and out in the world. It's happy news.
Thank you so much.
I think that's it for new folks. Matt Farina is not new, but it's always nice to see you, Matt. Let's move on to updates and reminders. So let's talk about the PR queue. Currently, it doesn't look like we have anyone in the PR Wrangler role for this week. I would love to take it, but I'm onboarding a new hire at CNCF this week, and I can't promise to do the job justice. So, is there someone who is able to take on the PR Wrangler role this week?
I can't do it this week either. Just swamped with other things.
Yeah, as we get closer to GCP next, we're just slammed.
Gotcha. Okay.
I could do some on Friday. Wednesday, Thursday, I've got to take my daughter to UNC Chapel Hill orientation, but I could start Friday.
Friday is better than none. Yes, and Matt, there are PRs that need wrangling. So last week, as PR Wrangler, our PR queue right now is insane, just to let you know. We have 85 untriaged issues and 105 open PRs as of yesterday. Last week, in wrangling PRs, normally I can get through about 15 to 20 PRs a day, depending on the size. But in one day last week, 20 PRs opened. So they're outstripping our ability to wrangle them effectively.
The queue was down a little bit today. The last I looked, maybe an hour ago, it was at 93, I think.
Oh, that's always a relief.
Just
and I can do some tonight. So I can start some tonight. And like I said, I just got 2 days. I got to take my daughter to college, but for orientation. But then I can do some on Friday as well.
Sure. Thank you, Brad.
Sure.
I'm wrangling anything that comes in that is related now. The topic group has gotten larger. KubeADM, Core DNS, or in fact, anything touching DNS. And we're working on that stuff as iteratively as I can persuade the eager devs to do. They want to change all the things all the time.
Thank you for being on top of that particular subject area, Jennifer.
Happy there. I can't claim sole credit for it.
Cheers. So it's looking like ad hoc assignments for PR wrangling is not working, and we might need to do like a scheduled rotation in advance. And I don't know what that looks like. The only thing that comes to mind is doing like shift bids or schedule bids, but it doesn't look like we can rely. I think we're used to relying on people just sort of stepping up and saying, yeah, I can do it this week or next week, but I don't think we can continue with that model. So let's think about how to get a regular, more reliable PR Wrangler assignment going, and of course, like folks can trade and whatnot, but yeah, we can't keep doing this ad hoc. It's not working. It's not working for us. It's not working for PR contributors. So I'm going to make a note
Zach, I have an idea if you're interested. Has anyone here heard of or used at present something like OpsGenie or PagerDuty? Essentially, it puts someone on call, and then you create a schedule and a rotation, and everyone that's an approver would probably fall into this category, and each is rotated for a week, and it picks, and you can see, and then people can trade in there, and just for a certain specified period of time, you're on as the PR wrangler. And so then about 6 weeks ahead of time when you're going to be involved, or however many approvers we have at present. Could be a way to kind of get a more rhythmic schedule out of it.
Sure, and thank you for the suggestion. My only quibble with a pager model is that it works on an interrupt basis. The idea is that you don't do anything unless you're interrupted, and the PR wrangler will always require active participation and sort of figuring out what you want to do in the process of doing it. And so it's something that you have to approach actively rather than on an interrupt basis. Yeah, Jared.
Yeah, we use a system internally similar to PagerDuty where it's it's called rotations, and it's basically it's for exactly this issue where you just put in a queue of names, and then once a week it just sort of goes through the queue and says you're the person now that's going to be wrangling all the issues. So the thing is that you can also stick in when you're out of office, and it will skip over you during that time. So if you're if you're like Misty and you're managing the release, you probably don't want it in the month leading up to the release, so you're out. I think PagerDuty can do that. It might be worthwhile looking into a system that can do it. I think a few other SIGs are using similar processes, so it might be worthwhile reaching out at the community meeting. I can do that on Thursday if you'd like.
Other SIGs. Yeah, that would be awesome, Jared. Thank you. It would be, yeah, if other SIGs have a way to do this that doesn't require us to reinvent the wheel, that would be awesome. So should I put you down? Can we check in next week on the 19th, next weekly meeting?
Yeah, I won't be able to attend next week's meeting, but I'll send out an email with what I find out.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, let's move on to 1.11 doc updates from Misty. Misty, how are 1.11 docs doing?
They're going pretty well. We're in the thick of a whole lot of reviews and a whole lot of back and forth with contributors. So it's going well for the most part. I think I assigned one PR each to you, Steve, Andrew, and Zach Arnold to sort of get a few of them off of my direct plate. And hopefully that was okay. I am in the middle of some big rewrites for a few of them because it would be better if the content goes in right the first time for new features. It's been going well. I've been getting the feedback that I needed for the most part, and the SIG release people have been super helpful. I think that as of this morning, we have something like 14 or 15 PRs in the 111 queue. We had kind of a weird thing happen last week where removing a whole, but there were a couple weird things that happened because we had one PR that went in sort of by surprise. It was ready, but I think that we forgot, or I didn't realize that if you already have an LGTM, or if you already have an approval, anybody can LGTM something and then anybody can remove a hold. And I think that in that particular PR, the approval should have probably been canceled because content changed after it was approved. So I think there was a little bit of a bug in Prow, and so something got in. So there's not really an actionable thing for that. Just kind of maybe be aware and be careful about when things have an approval and the content changes. I don't really know what the action is, except try to let the final approval be the release Meister unless it's something that you've been assigned. Like for those ones that I assigned out, I would probably be happy for those to be approved by you. That's kind of the point. And we have a couple of people who are docs approvers who are not as involved with Sig Docs. And that's probably for historical reasons, but those people should like adhere to the Spider-Man logo of great power and great responsibility, probably.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm pretty new, so some of this is kind of cultural folklore sort of stuff that I'm just not clued into yet.
So here's my understanding of how this works, and it might have changed, but I think it's still the case if anyone who is listed as an approver gives an LGTM, that's taken to also mean implicit approve, and the thing will just get automatically merged. So is that still the case?
That is the case. That is not what happened in the case of Misty's particular PR.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't think if anybody gives an LGTM, that's enough for the bot to merge it. I think it has to be someone who's listed somewhere as a reviewer. But those are
that would be true. I don't think it can be a self LGTM either. I think that actually gets kicked out.
Yeah, you cannot self-approve or self-LGTM your own PR, but anyone inside of the Kate's org can issue an LGTM or revoke one, and they can issue or remove a hold. So that was part of the shock that we experienced in that particular PR.
True. But if somebody in the org who's not listed as a reviewer in our repository issues an LGTM, is that enough for the bot to, if there's someone else is approved, is that enough for the bot to automatically merge the PR?
Yes.
Okay, that should not be that. I mean, do the rest of you agree that should not be the case?
Well, I think it could be argued.
Misty, I'm sorry. Matt, please chime in?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to let you know that for the bot, it's a configurable thing, if I remember right. It can be configured so that anybody in the K8's org who gives it a look good to me will give it the looks good to me label, or it can be configured so that only somebody who's listed as an appropriate owner's level reviewer or approver can do it. Because approvers can go ahead and do that as well. That's all configurable, and so it could be the way you're configured, and if you want to change that or figure out the way you want it, that's just a config option in the test info repo.
Excellent, thank you for that. Let's dig in, and I absolutely agree with you, Steve. I don't think we should get people coming through and doing cowboy LGTMs.
So what I don't think should happen is I don't think that an approve, like a /approve, should imply that that also means /LGTM. I think those two things should be separate, because I think that we can, if those of us who have rights to approve something, we can also LGTM something. But a lot of times, at least in 1.11 so far, I've been using the LGTM to be something that the technical reviewer can set so that I know that they're good with the content.
Yeah, I mean, I thought when Joe Heck wrote everything up, that's what we agreed, right? That you'd let the technical person do the /LGTM and we do the approve. Are we changing that or something?
No, we are not. So I'm going to call back to the discussion that we had about this when Prow functionality was originally enabled, and remind us that if you are an approver, that approvers have special magic LGTM powers, that if you LGTM something that you have approval rights over, that also acts as an approve. So if you /LGTM something as an approver, you also need to add a hold so that it doesn't automatically merge. And then, but yeah, that was what we decided to do, was to, if you add a /LGTM, to add a hold if you're an approver. And this is also a good time to remind reviewers that if a PR, please check the release branch of a PR, and if that is in a release branch, don't merge it. The only person who should be merging release PRs is the release meister, and for 1.11 that's Misty. So please be careful to please double check the branch of a PR before you give a merge to it. It creates a headache for the release meister. It creates a headache for the PR, the developer whose feature PR is in question. So just please be mindful and only let Misty, let the release meister merge PRs associated with the release branch.
Yeah, and there may be times where there's something that you don't know. Like maybe I'm in dialogue with somebody and somebody has told me this shouldn't go in before X other thing goes in, and maybe I haven't like gone in and specifically put a hold, but I know something, so it might be worthwhile just to, I mean, it may feel like you're saving me paperwork by merging it on my behalf, but that might not actually be the case. And I'm the one who's going to have to resolve conflicts at the time that we do the release, so it's probably good for me to be clued in.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Andrew, let's talk about considering an alternate Sig Docs weekly meeting time to make it easier for contributors in Asia Pacific to join us for weekly meeting. Andrew, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, because there seems to be, obviously we have like Jiming and other people in China that aren't able to attend this meeting because it's like in the middle of the night for them. And then it seems like there's more interest now from Korea and Japan as well. So we want to consider maybe having an alternate time that's APAC friendly. The issue is the big time difference, because for Korea and Japan, like if we did it at like 4 p.m. Pacific time, that would be okay. But then it still would be maybe a little too early for China. And if we did it, for China, then it wouldn't be till like after 5 p.m. Pacific, which seems kind of late for people since, we're getting out of work at the time. So I'm struggling to figure out a good time that would work for people. And then also we should talk about frequency, because I don't think we necessarily need to do it every other time, but maybe if we had one like once a month or something that was APAC friendly, that would be good.
Yeah, just talking about it from sort of the larger team perspective at Google, we've moved to some alternating meetings where we have a 10 a.m. meeting, and then we'll have a 3 or 4 p.m. meeting, and it alternates every other week, and that actually seems to be pretty good. 2 p.m. seems to be the best time to try to coordinate both. Like we have folks in Dublin and London and in Sydney. So 2 p.m. seems to be the best time to try to accommodate all those folks, but Japan and China and Korea are a bit further out, so that makes it trickier. So I think the alternating method sounds better to me, but I leave it up to folks here. It's just how we solved it within Google. Yeah, people in India would definitely love to attend. Maybe like a 10 and a 4. I don't know. What do folks here think?
When you say a 10, what do you mean? Like 10 a.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Pacific? What do you mean?
Sorry, 10 a.m. Pacific and 4 p.m. Pacific. The bulk of people that we have, like 10 a.m. would accommodate everybody, folks in Europe who want to attend, and it's an easy East Coast time. And then the 4 p.m. is a fairly good time for people in Asia. Actually, Raja, what is 4 p.m. in 4 p.m. PST is what time in where you're at?
It would be 4:30 a.m.
Ooh.
Yeah, you might actually have to go later than that. Is it 4 or 5? I'm trying to remember.
5.
For Korea, I think you might have to go 5 p.m. Pacific time. Is that 8 or 9 Korea time?
Yeah, it's brutal. What?
Yeah, Korea and Japan are like +9 GMT, and we're -7 right now. Wait.
Let's see. Let's see. It's almost 11 in the U.S. or in on the West Coast. It's 1:52 a.m. in Beijing, 2:52 a.m. in Tokyo, 11:52 p.m. in Bangalore. With a 3-hour spread in the middle, there's just no way to make everyone happy. So we might want to consider 3 different times if we want to get India participation as well. So we would be looking at like, let's see, if it's 11:52 right now, it's 10:30. If we did, I'm just trying to do the math in my head really quick. Like even like if we did a 5 p.m. meeting, that would be, if you add a 7 hour, that would be 6 a.m. in Bangalore. If we did a 7 p.m. meeting, that would be 8 a.m. in Bangalore, 10 a.m. in Beijing, and 11 a.m. in Tokyo. So I mean, it's well after hours for the West Coast, but it's like the least egregious. It would maximize APAC participation, and if we're going for APAC, we might just have to eat it in terms of like once a month having a 7 p.m. meeting.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do once a month 7 p.m. meeting, I guess. And if you're thinking of using three times, you know, I feel pretty flexible about it. But Zach, I kind of think it's you should put together the proposal since you're the one who would be running the meeting.
Okay.
I mean, the rest of us, you know, could miss if we had to, but you'd be committing to these times.
Sure. Yeah, that's rough. I've got a 7 p.m. weekly commitment on Tuesdays. Might we consider a different day than Tuesday for the 7 p.m. meeting? Maybe like a 7 p.m. Monday, because that would be Tuesday APAC time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, Monday definitely be better for me than Tuesday. I have a similar conflict on a Tuesday.
Okay, then I will put together a proposal for a 7 p.m. Monday evening Pacific time meeting, and that would be 8 a.m. Bangalore, 10 a.m. Beijing, 11 a.m. Tokyo. Does that sound right?
And 10 p.m.
Eastern Standard.
10 p.m. Eastern Standard. Yes.
Actually, 10 p.m. daylight. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I always mess that up.
Okay, Raji, that sounds good to you. Takuya, is that okay? 10 a.m. meeting on, or excuse me, 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. Does that work? Is that a time that works well for you? Great. Okay, let's. I will put together a proposal for the first APAC friendly time. Let's move on. I have just a small item to go over how hold works. So like we just covered earlier, hold works like LGTM. Anybody inside the K8s org can issue or lift a hold. Matt, do you know if that is configurable as well?
I don't. I think it is anybody. Last I checked, it was not a configurable option.
Okay, thank you. It didn't look that way from the documentation, but good to ask. All right.
And that's just /hold?
Yep.
Perfect.
/hold and /hold cancel. So be aware that /hold doesn't carry any additional weight. Anybody can put one on and anyone can take one off of any PR. All right, moving on. So I was contacted by Takuya, who is with us from Japan, who's looking for sponsors for K8s membership. I have included a link in the agenda to his PR history. If someone else would like to be a sponsor, please leave a note in the agenda, or just let me know. If you want to take a look at his PR history first. It's a little thin, but I look at some of the quality. I look at the quality of some of his PRs, and I am satisfied. If you want to defer until he submits a couple more PRs, I would be totally fine with that. or if you're willing to go ahead and sponsor, that would be cool too. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask like if he might have time to help with the PR wrangling, because I think that would also show, demonstrate some, some visibility.
Sure. We would have to, the problem with wrangling PRs is that you have to have approver permissions to do it.
Right, but I mean, he can maybe shadow someone and do most of the work, and then like someone could just do the final approve or whatever.
Sure. Let me think about that. It's PR wrangling. I don't know. Let me think about it. But thank you for this. Thank you for the suggestion. Steve, you have an agenda item for a prototype by Qiming in PR 8965. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is about the YAML files that we use in for little examples in the Kubernetes docs and tutorials and tasks. And the problem right now, our practice has been to put any YAML files associated with a task topic in the same directory as the task topic itself. But there are two problems that come up with that. One is that we're doing a lot of reorganizing of the table of contents in our directory structure, and that means that every time you move a task topic, you have to move all the associated YAML topics. And the other problem is that we have this test that runs along with our, as part of our Travis testing, and it goes through and makes sure all these YAML files are valid. And it uses a hard-coded list of where those YAML files are. So every time you move a YAML file, you should go in and update that, list of YAML files to be tested. And what has happened in practice is instead, just to get things to happen, we go find those YAML files and we just delete them from the list of files that should be tested. And so then now they've fallen off the radar. And I think as we write new topics and create new YAML files, at least I haven't been even aware of that test file, so I haven't been going and adding them. So the proposal would be to have a single place where we put all the YAML files so we don't have to move them around as we move topics around. And then the question is, could we share that among different languages? And after thinking about this and talking with Qiming and Jennifer, our thought is that we can't share them across languages probably, but for a given language, we should have one place where all the YAML files live, and that would solve a couple of these problems.
I think that makes sense. I think you're absolutely right that it has to be on a per language basis, but that I agree that it's possible to consolidate those in a single location per language. And that's probably the best approach. Does anyone else have feedback on how best to store and monitor changes, updates, removals to YAML files in the repo? Okay. Steve, I would say go for it. It sounds like it seems technically sound to me. I think you guys are on the right track.
Okay.
I can't wait for this to happen.
Yeah. No. Thank you for dealing with the headache and the frustration of watching Netlify break yet again for a reason that is opaque, and digging into the solution. I appreciate your work there. Okay. Moving on. Status of Hugo migration. So Andrew and I took a look at outstanding PRs in the Hugo migration milestone. And Andrew, do you want to say a little bit about what we looked at and what we found and how that will go?
Yeah, we're down to about 9 open issues. So we've gotten rid of most of them. I think from what I remember when we looked at it together, there was only really like a couple that still needed to be finished. I think they're done now, and the rest of them they're not low hanging fruit anymore. It's like things that we'll either need Yarn to help with, or we'll just take some time to fix. Like there's CSS one. There's a bunch of like moving stuff around ones. So I don't know. I mean, so we've made really great progress. So we just need to, I don't know, try to stamp out the rest of them.
Yeah, it was really impressive to look at the Hugo milestone and see just how many PRs for cleaning up post Hugo migration had been done. Like Andrew's summary is accurate. The PRs that are remaining are either things that like Bjorn Erik Pedersen or maybe like Steve Francia can consult on, because they are no longer low hanging fruit. Of the PRs that remain open in the milestone, like 3 or 4 of them I remember are things like it's not broken, but in code samples the colors changed. So things that are technically different, they technically broke but aren't broken during the build, they're just different now. So if somebody feels very strongly about CSS and about design aesthetics, they would be great to tackle. But I mean, they're P3 bugs. They're sort of optional to fix. So I guess the good news is that the Hugo migration is mostly done, and it looks really good. And
I have one thing to bring up about the Hugo migration that we discovered late last week, I guess. I think that the template system, as far as concepts, tasks, and reference templates, used to be somewhat more optional than it is now. Because if you're not using a template now, your table of contents gets a little bit weird. So we did apply the template to lots and lots of topics that we found that didn't have templates. So that's something to be aware of. If you see doubled bullet points or any bullet points at all in your table of contents entries, or no, I think it's doubled bullet points, then that's a clue that that page needs to have a template.
So Misty, do you think we need one more template for something like reference docs that aren't, they're not pure reference docs, but they're just in the reference section talking about referencey kind of things? Because I noticed somebody said what I've done here doesn't seem to fit the idea of concept, task, or tutorial. And so what template should I use?
So I don't actually know the answer to that question. I have worked within systems before where we were working with the DITA, and we decided that we were just going to use concepts for everything because we could make everything work in concepts, and it was a lighter weight approach. I'm kind of negative about the idea of making a template to fit content that doesn't currently fit a template. Maybe we can make a really generic template, or maybe that content needs to be reconsidered. I don't know. Like making another thing for people to remember seems like maybe the wrong thing. But I'm new, so I'm not the one who would have the strongest opinion here. I didn't develop the templates.
Yeah, I think what we've done, which is to just use the concept template as the catch-all for anything that's not a task or a tutorial, is fine, and it's at least fine for now. So we can think about this more as time permits.
I do have a question about how the templates work, because I don't actually know. The what's next thing at the bottom doesn't always apply. What happens if we leave that off right now of the template? I didn't test it to see. And there's a similar thing for tasks, which is like discussion. And I don't actually know what's supposed to go into discussion for tasks, because it's not like we have, most of our tasks don't seem to have something that I would call discussion if I was just like looking at the rendered output.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I think in discussion, if I remember, that's an optional one, and I put that in there just in case there was some discussion needed. But I don't remember about the what's next. So, and I haven't looked at how they work.
That should be optional too.
Yeah.
If this is the way to fix, you know, if the symptom, if like the hard symptom for lack of template is that TOC behavior, we have an issue with the generated ref docs. And I proposed what I thought might be a fix in Steve's preliminary pull request against the 111 branch for the generated docs. I was wondering whether we could simply suppress the TOC, but if the proper fix is to wrap everything in a template, we're not doing that for the generated docs at all, is my understanding and recollection. So we have another can of worms that possibly needs to get addressed outside the scope of this meeting, but I figured I'd better flag it.
Yeah, I'll look at that with you. This is making the Hugo migration cleanup look a little farther in the distance. I mean, finishing the cleanup looks like it's a little farther out.
Steve, can I ask you, when do you want to follow up in a week? Do you want to follow up in 2 weeks?
I'd like to follow up in a week and in 2 weeks, because I think we got to really push on these kinds of things before the, you know, for the 1.11 release.
Yeah, that's my worry too.
Yeah.
I am probably not available real soon, but by the end of this week, if you want help or want to brainstorm, Steve.
Yeah.
Free.
Okay. Just for perspective, I think if memory serves, 1.11 is currently scheduled to drop on Wednesday next week, so 6/20. So if we come back next week, that's you basically have like 8 days to figure it out.
Well, so worst case scenario, we ship for 111 with some extra bullets on these pages, and we update. I mean, it's not great. We need the templates. I'm not saying that we should let this slide indefinitely, but we're clearly approaching getting caught between a rock and a hard place.
I have a controversial suggestion that we could also have a temporary fix somehow in CSS by just like figuring out some CSS way to suppress the, like if it's in the table of contents and the list item doesn't have any text, so they don't show a bullet for it. Like it seems like that may be something that somebody could devise in CSS as a short-term fix.
At this point, I'm going to moderate lightly and suggest that we move this out of this or offline, and move this to a separate discussion in a dedicated meeting.
Sure.
Right. All right, let's move on. So Jennifer, I see you added an agenda item based on today's discussion in Sig Docs for guidelines about documenting alpha features or docs at any specific feature state. Can you sum up quickly and briefly and what you propose to do about it, or that we do about it?
I think that we need a write-up that is guidelines both for us and for folks contributing to feature docs, release docs, docs per release. This has been a source of confusion in every release that I've been involved with in the past. So when it came up today in Sig Docs, that's why I flagged it. I'm not prepared to provide anything specific right now. I wanted to put it into the agenda so that we didn't lose it. I'll follow up in 2 or 3 weeks. I don't want to commit to any sooner than that. We're heading up to the release. It's not going to affect 111 anyway.
Thank you for catching that. I saw the discussion go by. I didn't have the chance to dig in before the meeting. But that was Tim Allclair?
No, Tim St. Clair, which is the other reason I flagged it. He's also at Heptio. But it's a valid concern because I've seen it come up before. And I'm not even sure who the stakeholders are. So that's really all there is to say about it at this point, I think.
Okay. Thank you for highlighting it. And I agree that we absolutely need to be mindful in how we document feature state. So right now it's kind of haphazard, and in PRs where feature state comparison has come up, it's been difficult to discern a single source of truth. So anything that we can do to provide clarity there, I think, will be helpful.
Yep. And this is not just for the folks in Sig Docs. This is guidance we need to promote more generally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is the problem that we don't have a mechanism for doing this, or is the problem that we have a mechanism and we just don't stick to it?
We have the feature state flag, which seems to me to be applied more systematically than it used to be. But the issue that came up today in the Slack channel was where apparently in releases past, and I think I probably helped usher PRs through, some eager devs anxious to comply with the feature tracking spreadsheet for the release have provided pretty thorough documentation for alpha features, which really aren't meant to have like whole pages devoted to them when they are still in alpha. It's a question. It's a question, right. And we don't have a standard or agreement about it. And I've heard it discussed in vague sorts of terms on at least 2 release teams now.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Moving on, Zach Arnold, I see you have what is this? A prototype link checker in Go. Tell me more.
Everything in this is written in Go. I took a stab at it, and for those of you that enjoy the intricacies of depth first search, this will probably fascinate you. But essentially, this will print out to standard out all of the broken links, I think at depth of 5, if I remember correctly, links away from Kubernetes.io, and I'll just traverse the whole website. It takes like 30 minutes to do at present, at least in my first few runs on my local machine. So my question was, what do we do with broken links? Should this be emailed somewhere? Should this be run as like an AWS Lambda function? If so, how often? Should this thing open issues on GitHub for broken links? Should this be a thing that must pass when we merge PRs? It's just a thought I was having.
I have one quick thought on the should it merge before we pass PRs? Is there anything
Probably
outside
not.
of a PR that could break it?
Oh, totally. I mean, a link that randomly now 404s outside of a PR could totally cause that, which is why I was not super set on that suggestion. But I just wanted to toss out all of my thoughts.
I think we had talked about this in the past. This is something we'd run every month or few months or something, or right before, I think that's how we talked about before, and it generates a lot of good stuff for doc sprints and what have you. But I didn't think we wanted it running every time.
Okay.
I don't know. That was what I recall. If other people
Or at least not yet, right?
Right.
When we know that the site contains many broken links, it seems like not such a good idea. But one option would be to get things as cleaned up as we can, and for some reasonable, currently undefined value of reasonably cleaned up, and then to incorporate it. But I guess my main point is a caution against doing anything that involves the PRs at this stage of the game.
Totally.
I think it would be lovely to get something like this going sooner rather than later, though, because we keep, I don't know about anybody else, but I have sure wrangled multiple pull requests against the same broken links in the same files.
Yeah, we want that. This will save us. Not only will it do the right thing, but it will save us so much time in these small PRs that come in, and then we have to wrangle.
Is there a way to just apply it to the files in a given PR? Because I feel like there's two levels, like scanning the whole site, which takes a long time. But then if it's just limited to the files in the PR, that should be pretty fast, and it should help us fix things.
Yeah, I actually really like that suggestion. We could probably have it just read through the GitHub API, take the Netlify link, and then the change set that exists, read through, scan for any href tags, which would be links, and then just scan those and make sure that's all good to go. Yeah, it could totally be done.
That's a pretty naive approach, though, because the PR could be reorganizing files in such a way that it's causing broken links in other places. Like, I think that's a good first start, but that shouldn't be considered sufficient to know that.
Sure, there should be multiple levels. Like, where we should still run, like, the monthly whatever that does the in-depth thing, but just like to minimize the impact on PRs, we could limit the scope for that.
I like it. I think, obviously a 30-minute gate check is undesirable, but if we can limit the scope of, to simply the files that have been changed, while that's not, well, as Misty points out, that's not a wholly sufficient approach, it sure beats what we've got now. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful idea. Bye, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us. I think, let's take a look. It would be, honestly, Zach, it would be really helpful to see like a sample output.
Sure.
I'm curious to see what kind of issue output it could generate in GitHub.
Probably, so again, all of this is completely, we're talking pie in the sky. At present, what it does is simply crawl through the whole website, scan for a depth of 5, and output on the command line what links are broken.
Okay.
So everything else that we would love for it to do, that's something that I could totally build, and is configurable. So I think at this point we're sort of saying, and I'm happy to send sample output, but I think at this point what I'm mostly saying is like, now that it works, what direction do we want to take it?
So it sounds like, if I'm hearing folks correctly, it sounds like limiting the scope to files changed in a PR and having that as including that in the CI gate checks is the way to go. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, well, I was thinking if we had different modes, right? So one would be for the PR gate checks, but then there might be another one that we might run more, that's site-wide, that's maybe monthly or something, that could do the more in-depth thing. Because Misty is right, like it's not gonna, if we just limit to the PRs, it's not gonna cover everything, so we just need sort of different tiers that will kind of catch the different level of problems.
Yeah, and anytime one of us, gets inspired to fix broken links, we can run the link checker on the whole site, right?
Fair.
That then leads me to my next question, which is, when someone gets inspired to run the link checker, what exactly does that look like? My prototype was to toss it up in AWS Lambda, and it just runs as a Go binary. It goes and checks stuff and has an output, which is lovely, but that's pretty much constrained to the only person who can invoke that is me, because I have access to my AWS account. So how would this thing best be leveraged by the entirety of Sig Docs? Obviously, I'd love to democratize this as much as possible.
That's a good question.
Is it a single Go binary we could just download and run?
Totally. Of course, I would probably have to cross-compile it for the various architectures that we all run, Linux, Mac, and Windows, but it absolutely could be done.
It would be better to have it in a Docker container instead of having to have us download a binary or potentially compile a binary. I also think it would be really nice eventually if it could run somehow unattended and create a PR with the problems that it finds, or update an existing PR. There used to be a Jenkins plugin that would let you do that, that would let you like reuse the same pull request multiple times.
Well, I mean, I think if that would actually be pretty easy to accomplish if there was a consistent way in which it created pull requests that it could obviously just go check through and say, hey, did I recently mention this in the cache? And I know the way that I tend to make requests, so I will check to see if that's something I've already opened an issue on in the repo, in which case I won't do it again.
I like it.
Yeah, I was to say, mostly this was for ideating, and then I'll go and iterate and build more stuff based on your guys' feedback.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, let's see that Timothy St. Clair, you have joined us. In the few minutes that we have remaining, let's go back and talk about guidelines for documenting alpha features now that we have Tim St. Clair with us.
Yeah, don't do it. Putting documentation out in the wild for alpha features on the main website is generally can be a supportability nightmare, both from a docs perspective and from a development perspective, because alpha features there are no guarantees for alpha features other than they can break. And it also requires a set of other cascading changes that typically have to occur to enable those alpha features. So they're not typically enabled by default. They're typically disabled on purpose and they're not tested. So putting those things on the forefront in main documentation can be problematic. And I've been finding, as part of this sequester lifecycle release, we're trying to systematically take a look at what has grown organically and try to restructure and refactor our docs to make it clean. And as we dig into all of the dependencies that go out, we find that it kind of sprawls further and further, sometimes getting to the point where we have, for example, like the cloud provider integrations, where it's very difficult to follow. It's not a cohesive guide, and it calls out a bunch of details that we probably should never call out in the wild. So that's the TLDR there. But I had another comment for a different thing after this.
Okay, so if we just had a summary of don't document alpha features in the wild, would that suffice as a guideline?
So I like the idea of not documenting alpha features, but this really, I mean, the reason we do is we got a lot of, I won't say pressure, but we were asked strongly to document alpha features with the idea that we want people to try the cool new stuff. So the reason we've been doing it is that the Kubernetes core developers had been asking us to. So Tim, are you saying that we just really want to shift in attitude about this?
If we do, there should be some type of like series of clauses or standard set of things that we put at the top of everything that says like warning, warning, warning. You're treading off the beaten path. These are not fully tested features, and if you rely on them, all of these things could occur. So I think if we do, we can either have like a link out, right, from the main document that sort of links to how do you enable these things, or some type of set of clauses that it makes it clear as day that what a person's the journey that they're about to embark upon is not standard supported Kubernetes.
Well, I love the idea that we could get out of the business of documenting alpha features.
Me too. Right
anybody
now,
else want to comment on that? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Right now, I'm in the thick of this for 111, and I believe because of historical work on the part of Sig Docs, Sig release is actually fairly strong about kicking issues out of the milestone if they don't have at least some minimal docs, including alpha features. And I think this is the only way that they have to enforce that every feature should have some kind of docs, because something graduates from alpha to beta, and maybe nobody remembered to document it. So I think that their thinking is if you at least get something in for the alpha, then at least you have some kind of docs. And yeah, how are people going to test it and move it from alpha to beta if they don't know that the feature exists or how to use it? So there's like a tension there between wanting to have a very stable product and wanting to have a fast moving cutting edge
I like the idea of having a standard disclaimer. And I'm sorry, but for the purposes of time, Tim, you mentioned you had another comment. We have a hard stop at 11:30. So I'm going to leave it up to you whether you want to address your other comment or continue with the discussion about alpha features.
I think we can punt on the alpha features one. That was not the major reason. We could leave that for another time. But the restructuring and reformatting of some of the content that's there, I don't know if there's a policy or process by which we do some of this, but I'm looking to restructure some pieces just to make it so it's lumped together. Because right now, underneath the administrative guide, there's like a separate set of docs which are not. It's not visible to the user that these docs belong to KubeADM, and I put a subfolder just to have it so that it's clear that all of these docs belong to KubeADM and nothing else, right? So it's not confusing to anybody who's browsing through the details.
That sounds awesome to me. I would suggest just open a PR and go for it.
There is a PR open. Misty commented on it.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Is Jennifer Rondeau involved in that PR?
She punted to Misty.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think that's the right characterization. I think she asked for me to give additional feedback. I think her feedback is also valid and she still wants to work on it.
Okay, but I just want to confirm that I'm so happy to hear that there's an open PR, and it sounds like it is in the review process. So to me, that sounds like everything is going as it should.
Is there?
Go ahead.
Are there any questions about? Because there's only one level deep in the talk structure. Are there concerns about that?
Possibly, but I think that discussion is probably best confined to the PR.
Okay.
If you want to assign me in, Zachary, Sarah, I'm happy to take a look at TOC weights and things like that.
Sure.
Awesome. All right, we are right up to time. So thank you, everybody. Great SIG meeting, really good discussion, and see you next week. Take care.